The largest content company do not own a single content. The largest, hospitality company do not own a single hotel. Why the largest taxi company do not own a single taxi? They
Yeah.
all build technology and then create an ecosystem. We have the ecosystem, a combination of the power of the technology, the AI, and the humans.
Mhm.
Uh, I call it like being aggressively digital but amazingly human.
How that device comes to you, how you pick it up, from a store or you buy it online, but all that technology, the wheels and the gears that go behind this entire global ecosystem or global supply chain that gives us our devices.
You cannot always predict geopolitical situation. You cannot predict seasonality, volatility, market, macros. But what is important is you have to have flexibility and nimbleness of your systems and processes to handle that. Now they're coming and buying online. That makes us to understand their behavior, what they're clicking, what they're saving in carts, what they are searching. We have about average 10 million searches happening per quarter in our platform in the customer interface.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Our Own Devices. As always, our promise is that you're going to learn something new. You're going to look under the hood and understand something that you really did not know so far. And to that effect, I think for the first time, we are going to talk about retail or what happens in the process till your device or your technology comes to you. And we have a great guest with us, which is Mr. Sanjib Sahoo, who is the president of Global Platform Group at Ingram Micro. I'm sure that's a name that's familiar to a lot of our listeners. Sanjib, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Really appreciate you having me here today.
So Sanjeev, as I said, people don't really bother about where all your technology comes from. How does something that's made in maybe a completely different continent, reach you maybe in a few hours after the global announcement about the device has come out, right? Um, and especially in a country like India, where earlier we used to wait 2, 3 weeks or months for a new iPhone to come. We have now become a first wave country. So a lot has changed, but that change is not easy, right? There is a lot of technology, logistics, management that goes into how this invisible machinery of tech delivery works. And who better to talk about it than Ingram Micro and its president, because you guys do it at scale. So if I can ask you about the global tech supply chain, it is almost always invisible, and I think people would not have even heard about it if not for COVID, right? COVID, when suddenly everything came to a choke, and that's when people realized, hey, there are so many of these things working in the background, right? Like suddenly you're struggling to get even a mouse for your computer because all your supply chains have choked. So it'd be great if you could walk us through how this machinery works and what makes it tick, what technology works in the background.
Yeah, absolutely. If you look at distribution, where we play and on the channel ecosystem, there are multiple hops through which the technology flows through, right? There is a vendor or an OEM who actually creates technology. Generally, let's talk about hardware because generally that's not how technology is bought today in the market. You have hardware, software, services all bundled. So if you look at the hardware piece, it is very the goes through different chains, right? So for example, from an OEM to a vendor, like which is produced, it goes to a distributor. Now there's a aspects of you have to procure that, you have to figure out the logistics of it, you have to figure out, okay, where do you store the device from, a hub or a spoke model in logistics. Then from there you plan your inventory in a way that it's actually completely seamless, and then how you plan the inventory to be delivery, to doing that. If you look at the distribution, it goes in multiple hubs. The devices are procured from an OEM or a manufacturer. We have to look at what inventory you are actually taking position in. Then you plan the supply chain with the multiple hubs. It's a network or distribution. Then from there, you have to figure out through data where the demand is, how who is actually buying that, how do you actually distribute it. it can be both, like you actually have the demand for it and you are procuring it, or today we are looking at technologies where you can be proactive demand and figuring out how can actually procure this. So there's a lot of hops that goes in between. It's not that easy. And other complicated part is it's about bundling, right? So generally, it's not about one technology piece. Generally, at Ingram Micro, an average solution touches like six products or six different OEMs or vendors, right? If you look at the complexity, and a simple quote to do, takes three companies, 12 people, 72 hours, and our customers do hundreds of quotes every day. So imagine from the quoting process to understanding where the demand is, to figuring out where the supply chain is. It's a lot of optimization and work that goes in at a global scale. We operate in 57 countries and we touch almost 90% of the world's population. So the way we look at it is, yes, supply chain or distribution is invisible. And we are behind all the big technology brands to make them successful, or the B2B brands. But the idea is to make it more efficient and seamless. Today, one of the things we are working on is especially solving this problem with Xvantage platform, which I'll talk about that later in the show.
So, how much of data goes into calculating this flow? Is that like a real time kind of a thing, or do you say, okay, this new device is coming, and this is how we need to stock it based on our past patterns? And I've read about how companies like Amazon and all also use this data to predict demand, right? Like, that that, okay, during this season, okay, there's going to be a spike for certain kinds of things. So do you also use this kind of technology?
Absolutely. So if you look at it, it's almost like a turn ratio for inventory, right? Okay.
Yeah.
How so inventory, how much of it is staying in inventory reserve? What is the ratio means how many days the inventory will get out of your hubs, or your, centers. So there's a lot of planning that goes in process. But the real thing is not about just procuring, supply, how you connect supply with demand. Let me give an
Mhm.
example. Today, we actually look at a lot of data, which is we have more than 40 years of data with 4 petabytes of data that we have built our machine learning models. Then on that models, we look at it, okay, the inventory that we have, and obviously as a business, you need working capital to actually function, right? And then we proactively predict demand. Based on that, we can actually look at opportunities and go and push those opportunities to our customers. And it can be through sales team, calling that. It can be automatically through the customer interface and doing all of that, right? And this is the linking I was talking about. Yes, there is a inventory modeling we are working at. There's working capital predictions we are working at. We're also linking how proactively the demand, we are becoming from order taker to order maker. And one of the reason at Ingram Micro we are going towards becoming a platform company is we feel this entire industry, from the OEMs to the distributors to the resellers or the MSPs to the end customers, there's a lot of complexity. There's a lot of
Mhm.
inefficiencies. And how can we actually solve this problem, linking supply and demand with data and AI? That's what Ingram Micro is doing at a global scale through Xvantage.
Yeah. So, uh, as a company, you talk about delivering at the speed of need. How does that work? I know a lot of this is what you covered right now, but is that very challenging, especially when there are so many moving parts to what you're working on, right? Especially and and in the past couple of years, or let's say from COVID onwards, the geopolitical situation is also so different. It keeps changing so much. Like, so how do you manage that?
Yeah, actually, it's more of a global model, right? You have global
Mhm.
framework and
Yeah.
local models of execution if you're a global company, right? And
Yeah.
then what we do is every local region or every local country has their own end-to-end processes, how we look at, procuring inventory, how we look at optimization, how we look at demands, how we look at is the binds that we do from this technology or the vendors, are they actually profitable? So there's a lot of operational hygiene that goes through this. But I think the idea that we have to look at is there is not one single factor. And as much as we do data AI, it's not always foolproof, right? It's a learning
Yeah.
process,
Yeah.
evolution. What is more important is the hygiene of your processes and discipline. For example, if you are buying, you're looking at working capital and making sure that working capital or your return on working capital is at a level that is acceptable. If you're looking at the demand, how can we actually make sure that the inventory is not stored and you are actually pushing demand to a way that is important? Give an example. It's I think it's more about connecting the dots with data that is more efficient than one single process. So you cannot always predict geopolitical situation, you cannot predict seasonality, volatility, market macros, but what is important is you have to have flexibility and nimbleness of your systems and processes to handle that. For example, if there's a certain spike in demand, you can adjust your processes and inventory. Or if there is certain change in the condition of demand, you can do that. So those are the things that we take a look at in multiple factors. And is it always foolproof? No. But what we are doing right now is really creating, and one of the things we are working on looking at is using agentic AI to really create
Yeah.
operational hygiene. You cannot build all systems, but if you really have the data that we have aggregated, you have the knowledge factory and the process factory, and you have the AI models, you can connect the dots. For example, an agentic AI process can look at the inventory that you bought. And if it is, let's say, if it is actually aging, you can take that inventory using an AI process, push it as a deal or a recommendation opportunity to a customer that can actually buy that. So bringing that option to at the right point, right time to the customer, connecting the dots is an opportunity that we see, that we are working on.
So, if you could also talk about this Xvantage platform that you have, which is, redefining how brands and users are connected. So how does that work?
So Xvantage is not a tool or a platform to modernize distribution. It is a platform that we are building an entire B2B ecosystem to change it. There's a lot of inefficiencies in B2B. There's billing, supplying. B2B is complex, and then B2C, right? The sales cycle take long, there's quoting takes time. How do we create a B2C experience in B2B? How do we actually? So we started with Xvantage more than 3 years ago to really make Ingram Micro a platform company, a platform business. Because look, Ingram Micro doesn't own anything. We
Mhm.
connect the demand and supply. We
Yeah.
connect all these big technology brands that we work with to take those products out to the market. So my point was that, look, as you said, the largest content company do not own a single content. The largest, hospitality company do not own a single hotel. The largest taxi company do not own a single taxi? They
Yeah.
all build technology and then create an ecosystem. We had the
Mhm.
ecosystem and the
Yeah.
network. So we started building the platform. That is all Xvantage is. The foundation of Xvantage was to build on more than 40 years of data and the foundation of AI to take all the silos of the journey to create an ecosystem, right? And that is extremely important. The ecosystem is what Xvantage is. So we did not build an AI platform, data platform, hardware platform, cloud platform. We created one platform that is Xvantage, seamlessly connecting the demand and supply. So that's where we are in our journey. Today, it's live in 21 countries, including India, is redefining the way we actually take our experience to the market. It's connecting, the demand and supply, even with our vendors, from solving special pricing to quoting in minutes and seconds to really, creating, a persona for every single, vendor or
Custom.
customer or employee. And also, like look at multi-technology for hardware, software, cloud services. It's one single platform, one-stop shop. That is what Xvantage is.
So you also have this, shift happening from to a multi-channel kind of a format, right? Like a lot of the purchases are happening online. Uh, is that easier for a company like yours to manage? Because it's a drastic shift, and post-COVID, we are seeing that shift is becoming even more significant. So how are you managing that? Do you really need to look at it as a completely different entity, or is it an extension of what you do?
Yeah, I think it's a great question because if you look at it, our platform for customers, which is Xvantage for customers is kind of like e-commerce, but ecosystem commerce. So our resellers are coming and buying online through our platform, right? And if they can come and buy online, we also have our own AI framework for them to integrate with our systems. We have also created kind of like our app store, which is Xvantage Integration Hub. We meet our customers where they are without them changing any technology. Now, what it does is actually helps us to understand demand patterns better,
Mm.
because now they're coming and buying online. That makes us to understand their behavior, what they're clicking, what they're saving in carts, what they are searching. We have about average 10 million searches happening per quarter in our platform in the customer interface. That
Yeah.
helps us to improve our models in AI to understand demand patterns, propensity, what they are buying. So absolutely it helps. It helps us to then understand the back office of it, keep working on that and prepare. Because what we are doing is, before we were distribution was a very supply centric, model, right? We get from vendors, OEMs, we store the inventory, then we sell. But what we are doing right now is we are actually moving more towards a platform model, which is demand centric, put the customer first, bring in that demand and really figure towards how do we create more of an ecosystem between OEMs, vendors, hyperscalers, as well as our partners. So absolutely it helps.
So how much of this data, flows back to the OEMs, right? For instance, is that like a real-time thing, where exactly, all the data that you spoke about, that you have so many searches, which is a very good indicator of customer demand and intent. Uh, and, and you have the actual movement of stocks. So how do you flow that data back to, let's say, an Apple or a Samsung or any big company that you work with? Um, is it happening in real time, or again, do you filter it? Do you give it according to their needs?
It depends, like, so the platform is built on a real-time data mesh, and we have a custom AI factory that connects all the interfaces. We have a platform for our customers, employees, and our vendors, the OEMs, the tech companies, right, that you talked about.
Yeah.
Now let's take an example. If a SKU is added or some data is changed, so what we do is a, a OEM or a technology vendor can actually log into their platform and can view that data. For example, they can look at which partners are growing, which is not. They can look at performance insights. They can look at supply chain data about delivery, advanced service notification. They can set that. They can set marketing campaigns. So the data is real time, but also curated to what is more meaningful for the vendor or the OEM in a platform. If you look at any platform company, let's say Uber, or they have a platform for drivers and it's a platform for passengers, right? We created like a platform company, a platform for vendors, which call Xvantage for vendors, a platform for customers, and also a platform for employees. All of them are connected real time through our architecture with the real time data mesh. So yes, they could see that real time, but it's curated based on what they should see.
And so again, you mentioned this a bit, but the AI layer that you have, is that across everything that happens, like from, as you mentioned, from a supply chain management to a dynamic pricing? Is it across everything, and is it going to gradually take over more and more of what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a completely AI driven ecosystem, and it will not take over humans. Idea is it is to make us more intelligent, right? So if you look at Xvantage, it is the idea is to break all the silos and create a connected ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
In that ecosystem, it can be ordering, quoting, pricing, supply chain, recommendations. All of that engines are there, right? And all this business logic is powered by that real-time data mesh and custom AI factory that we have created. Now, we are improving it every day. Now, AI is not perfect. Now, we have done a lot of the work on the front office. We have done some work on the middle office. Slowly, we are improving the back office. There, it's a gradual progression, right? If I say everything is working right now, that's not. We started the journey about 3 years ago for a 45-year-old company. Not everything, but the idea is yes. The idea is to make us more intelligent so that our employees can focus with the power of AI on the things that is really meaningful for them, which means connecting from a buying process to inventory process to look at working capital, to look at how we do pricing, to look at quoting, how we can push the recommendations, or how we can actually, do bundling solutions, billing. All of that is the business logic that is catered by this AI, data, real-time data mesh.
If I can ask you one last question, with all this technology happening, uh, what excites you most about the future?
I think what excites me most of the future is a combination of the power of the technology, the AI, and the humans.
Mhm.
Uh, I call it like being aggressively digital but amazingly human. Because what is really important is, the mindset, the approach towards change, the strategy, you know, it's all that humans bring in, leaders bring in, and AI can enable them a lot to do that. So I think it's not replacing, it's reimagination. While
Mhm.
replacement creates fear, reimagination creates opportunity. What excites me is that as leaders, as employees, the AI and technology is pushing us to reimagine ourselves to be better, to be more
Yeah.
productive, and challenge ourselves. And I think when we challenge ourselves, we can evolve to be a better leader and better professionals instead of being complacent. And I think we all need that challenge to be better. So it's not just about whether AI will replace our job. We'll be replaced by people who will use AI better than us and not challenge themselves, because the mindset will drive the skill set. So my excitement is we should really push and challenge our limits, not limit our challenges, but at the same time keep learning, because there's no end to learning, and stop being perfect, and we should be a little more perfect every day. That's what this AI ST taught us. So that's what I'm excited about.
Sanjay, that's a great note to end on. So thanks for your time today, and I'm sure our listeners have sort of opened up their mind on how that device comes to you, how you pick it up, from a store or you buy it online. But all that technology, the wheels and the gears that go behind this entire global ecosystem or global supply chain that gives us our devices. So thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me on the show. Thank you for the opportunity.
So you were listening to Our Own Devices. We'll be back again next week with another guest and a lot more knowledge and insight. Till then, we are available everywhere you listen to your pods.